right.
Good for you.
Part two.
Okay. So, did anybody use all of this? So prize for person who used all of this.
I think it would go to you,
That's,
wouldn't it?
that's my default project template right there. Red.
Okay. So, which one you want to start?
Like the mock.
Yeah, I vote for Mark.
Okay.
Yeah, well,
Okay. So, anybody used mock before? Oh, okay. So let's go with mock. So what I have solution with a couple of projects, and we can start with the smoking. So what I have, I think, do you say it okay from the last one? Okay. So for the mock library, for mock demo, what I have here, I have some very smart stock advisor, like my artificial intelligence algorithm, which accepts some data provider, which provides information about stocks, and then I'm getting from the data provider price for some company, and if price is lower than $100, it's like, okay, yeah, buy it now. It's good, right? But when I write my tests, I probably don't want to go to some places and get this information. I want to write clean unit test without attaching my advisor to real market. And yeah, here's the data provider. So if I go to the test, so what I will do? First, I wanna mock my data provider. So I will say I create a mock for iData provider. So now I created maybe something more useful instead of this text. Provider. So this is my mock object, which represents my data provider. And now I can configure this mock object. So I can say when something happened, response in this way. So what I'm saying that data provider setup, and I'm saying that when data provider, when this one is called with something like get price MSFT, it returns, let's say 99. Okay. By the way, did you have a chance to watch today's event? Right. What do you like?
It all comes out at once and then people feel great. Getting parts of it after Christmas.
So today it was one thing presented is some small deal which you can put on your touch screen, and you can control like UI using this rotating knob. And they just published a blog where describing Open API. So it's not something really close just for Surface, but you can buy this knob for $99, and then there is API provided for it, and you can use it to control your own stuff with this thing. But okay, returning back. So now what we did is we created our fake data provider. We said that every time when data provider is called with this company name, it should return this. And then what we can do, we can say advisor equal new stock provider, data provider, okay. And I cannot provide directly data provider because it's a type of mock, right? Fortunately, we have here this object which represents necessary interface which we need. And finally, what we can do, we can say Pfizer dot is good to buy, say MSFT, and we can say something like Okay, and I will do something like console. Okay, so now if I will run it, and I cannot run it, obviously, and we don't need this, obviously, because it's a unit test.
I was going to say, why don't we just assert on it?
Yep. So we need to assert it. But I want to use this nice fluent assertion. So instead of just asserting, what I will do, I will say result. And instead of doing this, what I will say result should be true. Okay? Or I can do something like should be true. Like this. So there is a shortcut for true, so I can replace it should be true directly. If it's something like integer, then you can have here 55 or something like this. Okay. I will make it again nice. Should be true. Okay.
Yeah, make sure
and
that
I
you
can-
went before there.
Yeah, parentheses, second last line.
Yep. Like this. Now I can run it and expect. Yep. So everybody go and buy. Ready. And essentially this is it. So what we are doing here, we are creating in first line mock object. Then we can do lots of different configurations. I will quickly check which functions we have here. And when our provider is configured, how we want to prepare it for the script or for your test, you just execute your normal production code with this data provider. So to be able to do this, obviously your application should be architectured using something like dependency injection. But I believe if you want to create a really good unit test, you need to do dependency injection anyway. And here just a way how to abstract or how to detach the code or algorithm you want to test from the real source and from fluctuations of the real data. So in addition to this simple call return results, you can create something like calling callbacks, you can do async calls, you can set the if function throws exception, what to do. So lots of different things what can be done here.
One of the features I thought was really nice is instead of putting a specific string, you could, is any?
Yeah.
For the parameter,
Yes.
you can say is any
Yeah.
string a generic thing? Because
So-
you might not care on that parameter what the string is, as long as there is a string when you're doing the setup there.
Ah,
Yeah, so yeah, I should give you some context. Yeah, in the setup there, you can say is dot any or something like that, or is.
no, except you want to do any.
Hmm?
He was saying any, so you want to, as
Yeah,
opposed to
yeah.
empty, yeah.
But the same idea.
Same
so
idea,
you can
yeah, same idea.
It
Yeah,
can
there's
be
a few things like that where you can just say,
Yeah,
I don't
so-
care as long as it's this type.
It could be for
Yeah, exactly,
strings,
yeah.
it can be for numbers. So instead of providing some exact values, you can say for this range of data, return these for exactly this group of data, return these. So lots of different possibilities to prepare your mock to behave in different conditions. Okay.
And Andre, on the in fluid assertions, is that what the package is called in NuGet? Is it just called
Yes,
fluid
this
assertions?
package called Fluent Assertions. It's like this. So I just attached it before. It's very good. And again, this you can do this without this package. It's just nicer to read, and I don't think unit tests anytime are readable. So anything which can help to read your unit test for other people, I believe it helps. And this is one way to make your unit test more readable. And also you can provide some text here. something like. Right. Okay. So yeah, I don't need this. Right. So, what's next?
How about Verilog?
Yeah.
Sir.
I want to see the live log thing too.
Hmm?
I want to see the live log thing.
Maybe
too,
those
how you
two
abstract
together,
it.
how you use
Yes,
liblogs to
exactly.
abstract serial log.
Exactly. Let's talk about these two things.
Still multi-burden scenario is what you're saying? Multi-burden scenario?
Sure.
Understand?
But okay, so I think I'm not having liblock here. Do we have internet access?
It should be KW's KPL Country Hills.
Down there at the bottom,
So-
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see first what is a liblock and what it's doing. So I will create new project, and it will be class library. Let's call it liblog demo. And here what I will do, I will add this liblock package. I will go to NuGet. I will go to the packages. Liblock. Okay, so it's available. I install it. Okay, it's good to have internet. And so one thing which is interesting about this package, as I said, it's just one file. And you can go to GitHub, download this file, just add it to the project. With NuGet, only what you are getting is a nice thing that this file included in your project and also namespaces modified to match namespace of your project. So some automation to include this. If you are taking file from the GitHub, it will be some generic namespace, and you need to modify it by yourself. Okay.
So this just includes a C#.
Yeah,
The
it
actual
just
implementation,
includes-
not a DLL reference, it's just,
Yep.
here's the class.
Just class. Yeah.
Cool.
And what is nice for this compared to something like iLogger abstraction, something, there is some abstraction that you are not showing how you log to outside world. This class is private, it stays with you, and nobody else can accidentally depend on your logging. So only people who already use some libraries for logging, they will start seeing some objects coming from our class. So how it works? We have this class, I will rename it to something like class liblock. And I'll do something like public. This. And I need to create my internal logger. So for this, what I'll do, I will say ilog. And it will be my private. Static logger. And what we need is a logger. I think it's a log provider. Get. It's not that one, it's a logger. So it should be.
There's another logger there.
It's going No, my eyes are burning. No, it's not a logger. Huh. Let's see. Let's go to implementation. And it will be get.
This is log provided there.
Interesting. Let's start with this one. Yeah, it's not good, it's 4. And we need it's 4 plus. So the same pattern as you usually use with log4net with any loggers. So basically you create logger for some class, and so it will have full class name. So in the future you can filter your log entries based on your namespace. So absolutely usual pattern. And then with our functions we can say my logger dot let's say trace format. I will do something like hello, and I will put some object here. So instead of logging just text, I will put some object. I will have something like class user is 2 properties. Properties string okay, and string email. Okay, and here I will create a new one. Will be new user with test, and okay, that's fine. Okay, so I have this, and here I need to provide how to connect the string. So what I'll do, I will say this user. Okay, so I have my class, I have some login inside of this class. Now I want to see how this log will appear in my application. So I will go to console application, and here what I will do, I will say it will be logger. Cool. So what I'm doing here, I can do something like this. So here I create default logger configuration for the serial log, and based on this configuration I create logger, and then I assign this logger to a default static variable. Why I can skip this step assignment? I can say instead of this something like var logger, and I will have my local logger.
Luger.
So I can have my local logger and log in init. But if I do something like this, I will assign logger which I create to static variable, and this static variable will be recognized by my lib4log library. And this is where magic is happening, because lib4log knows that nlog use variable abc for the static as a static global variable. Serilog uses log.logger, log4net use some log4net.logger, and it connects itself to these default static variables if they available and if they assigned. So I will do some additional configuration. For this I can, with default configuration I do nothing, I just create configuration, but where to log I need to assign. So what I'm saying write to, and I will choose, think, literal console. So again, what this line is doing, this line assigns where to write the log. You can log to one location, you can log to many locations. And as I mentioned before, it could be really, really different locations. This is just a console with some color text. So your arrows will be red, your warnings will be gray, and so on. Instead of this, you can choose something like MongoDB. You can choose hockey apps if you are logging from Windows application. You can choose New Relic database. So right now they have around 60 different things. So anything you can imagine can be stored directly from this log. It can be Windows event service. It can be any SQL database, non-SQL database. Different storages like Flurry, Hockey app, what else we have? Anything. Analytics. Azure DB, Amazon DynamoDB. You can put it everywhere. And instead of storing just strings, it will store objects if target supports object representation of the data. I think what we can do now, when it's configured, I can actually create my object. I can say new, it's called closely block. Right? And so we need to add. And what I will do, I will say do. Okay, so I can run it. And I cannot run it because I don't have my default project. Now I will run it. And it is why it doesn't have it. Hmm?
Oh, there's nothing, but you're not putting anything.
Because I miss one configuration point. I miss medium level dot
Trace.
it will be verbose. So trace in libblock means verbose in here. So if I will run it now, and here is my log. So my application knows anything about how exactly I'm logging, and it just because I want to log, I can log from the library. And what you can see here, that it's not logging a string, it's actually here, it's a JSON. So if you will have more complicated object, it will be serialized JSON, and it will be stored here. Even more, so this serialization is controlled not by liblog, it's controlled by Serilog. So in Serilog, I have an option to replace default JSON serializer with my own serializer. And if I will replace it with my own serializer, then this string will change how it's presented. So, and Serilog allows different, like deconstruct objects, reconstruct them in different objects, so you can manage how objects actually are logged.
In your format string, you put at user.
Yes.
Is that the type name that you're referencing there? So it just says.
Okay, so this is a convention.
Oh, it's not. Okay.
Here's my
That's the
Yep. So name, it's independent. It doesn't necessary here. You can put anything. I can put.
Oh, okay. So that's what shows up then in the log file.
Something like-
It's just a
Oh,
substitution
Just a
parameter.
substitution parameter, yes.
so
And it's to distinguish different. So if I want to log the same parameter multiple times, I can say x1, 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 x1.
Hmm.
So then I will always take first object in the list of objects. Because here I can provide more than one object. I can say this one, I can say one more, and so on, so on, so on. Okay?
Yep.
So So this is just for convenient way to mention parameter. And this add is actually needed for serialization. So when you put add, it means that you want to put your object as serialized data, as object. If I will remove this add now, and we'll run again. So what we see that now object, my user object, is taken and just converted to
Just
string.
calls toString.
Yeah, it's just called toString. So you can control if you want to use toString or you want to serialize your object.
Which is handy if you override toString, you could do any kind
Yep,
of custom
yep,
stuff as
yep.
well.
You can do it.
Nice.
But what is nice about Serilog, why I really like, that when you're logging, you don't know which data you will need. So during logging, you really need to think, okay, will I need this field later when I debug issue or not? Because you never put in one log file all fields. With Serilog, it's an opposite approach. If you don't want to serialize something, you need to do something. So it encourages you to just put the whole object in your log. So then, when you will need data, it's available here. So it's for you, ready for you.
So let's say I have a sensitive property like, I don't know, whatever. Password.
Yep.
I didn't want to say that, but let's say I do that, but how do I exclude it from
So
serialization? Attribute or-
so you're not putting it here. Actually, it's interesting. So here, I don't know, in libflog, but in Serilog, you can exclude. So you can say that this object should be transformed in this object and excluding this field. So you can do this. Liblog, interesting question, I'll try. I will do.
But that's just so cool that it just wires itself up.
Yep.
Like it just goes looking for a logger. Oh, there it is.
So it understands
That's
log
pretty
for
neat.
net and log something like mock log, m log, I don't remember, and Serilog. So 4 loggers. If you are using something custom or not supported by default, they have log provider, so you can implement your own bridge between this library and your logger, and say set provider and use the same. It's not as cool as this magic, but still library usable even for users of non-standard loggers.
I guess you could extend this, couldn't you, to recognize other
Sure,
loggers?
yeah, the file is here, so
So, yeah, you have the file, there's the code, you just extend it to
Go,
recognize
it's
it.
just very long file. It's lots of stuff here, but you can extend it.
Yeah.
And obviously you can clean. For example, if you know that in your company you use just one logger, just goes there, remove, it's commented. So here is a section for nlog. So it goes there, removes the whole nlog section.
That's really nice.
Okay. So let's move next.
Fluent migrator?
Where's my grid? Okay. So for this, I don't have demo, I just have slides showing. So Fluent Migrator is published as an Apache 2 license. It's available as a package as well, and the main purpose to help you migrate your database schemas. I hope, again, you see from this one. Okay. So here's a migration. So what is a migration? Migration is a one schema of your database. Any schema at any stage of life cycle of your database is presented when you use this migration pattern as a sequence of migrations. So first time you create database or create schema for database, you create very first migration. And this migration can have create table with field ABC. So then you found that you need some indexes. So what you are going to do, you are going to create second migration, which will say add index DDD into table ABC. So next you found that you need to store more data. So again, you are doing alter table, do something. So in the end, you can create any version of database just by executing sequence of these migrations. When you use Fluent Migrator, and this is not just Fluent Migrator specific thing, this is a pattern which is used by many systems. It's used in Ruby on Rails, it's used in Java world, and it's used here as well. So it's a very common pattern, very powerful pattern, and with .NET, just the most useful tool which can be used. So here is how Fluent Migrator sees a migration. So instead of defining migration as a SQL script, Fluent Migrator proposes to have this as a class. As a class written in C# code, so you can compile it, you can verify it, and do whatever you're doing with your source code. And here you can see that migration is defined in two steps, up and down. Up is when you need to bring your schema from previous version to current version, and down if you want to downgrade your schema from the current version to the previous version. Each migration is marked with this migration attribute where you have a unique number. So it can be any number, you just need to follow some sequence because this number defines order of your migrations. So the first migration will be maybe 1 per year, so you can define. Is it based on year, or by unique user ID, or something like this? But it should be sequential and it should define proper sequence of all your migrations. In this case, we use this migration to add one more table. So we're just saying create table, we choose name nodes, we add some columns, and do some stuff, add additional columns. So it's easy. And why they're using this language, their own simple DSL instead of SQL? Because this tool working with different databases, and different databases has different versions of SQLs. So they created an abstract way how to define migration, and then this can be translated in concrete database. Also, migrations or this tool can be used not just migrate database, but seed database with some data. So, for example, you need to create some database with some predefined data for testers or for other developers. You can define some special migration marked with developer profile, and then when you run some tool, I will show later how to use it, you can say, okay, migrate this database to current version in this development profile. It will upgrade your database to the latest schema, and it will populate this database with data. So it's not just for schema migrations, it also helps with some data seeding. And here example, we just insert some data into the table. So how these classes are used? Usually you put them in one assembly, all these migrations, you compile this assembly, so in that you have DLL, and then you're using some migration runner. So you're saying, okay, here's my DLL assembly, here's my database, and please do the migration. You can use just command line migrator, you can use send task, commands build task, and break task. So you can directly integrate Fluent Migrator in your build scripts, in your continuous integration. And command line looks like this. So here's migrate exe, this is a command line. You are saying that I want to use connection, so in our case it's a SQLite database. Then for this connection I use SQLite driver. So here this driver is responsible for converting this C# code into actual SQL code. And then last parameter is where all are my migrations. When executed like this, database will be upgraded to the latest migration. If you want to upgrade or downgrade to some specific schema, you need to provide also additional parameter with your ID of your schema. Yes, please.
Does it have any way to track the version? So say I'm on version 1, asking it to go to version 3, it will apply the steps, or am I missing?
Yes, yeah. So, yeah, without this it will not work. So when it creates database, it creates one field with a version, and every time when you're just doing something like this, it actually checks what is your current version of schema, and it will not execute all schemas before. So it's obviously it's very smart. It's okay. Now we're at version 5, so we are just ignoring all migrations from 1 to 4, and execute 6, 7, 8, 9, and so on.
How fine-grained control do you have over the data types? I notice you have as string 4000. What do I get? Do I get a char? Do I get a varchar? Do I get an
Yeah, you
varchar?
can control.
But
And-
there's more.
You can control data
There's
types.
probably another dot as-
as
as
char,
Unicode
yeah.
or something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
And they have some specifics because some databases are really different.
Mhm.
So they have some extensions
Hmm.
specific for some databases. If you're okay to be locked, for example, to SQL Server,
Mhm.
then you can use the SQL Server specific data types and SQL
Ah, I see.
specific things. But then you're losing the ability to move your migrations for
Hmm.
different types.
Nobody ever changes databases anyways.
Yeah, but everybody wants to change, but
Everybody wants the ability to support all the different ones, but nobody ever changes.
yeah. Okay. So, any questions?
So that's very similar to Code First. Entity Framework does migration strategy.
Mm-hmm.
It just sort of figures it out in the background for you.
Yeah, you have less control.
Yeah, you have less
So
control.
here
over it.
you specifically,
I mean, it works off your data types, and there were some.
yeah. So there,
Additional classes
they have
that
one
you
have
associate.
class, and from the class they
Mhm.
create your schema.
Yeah.
Here you directly control schema and
Mhm.
have really good control how you go from schema to schema. Okay, and just think your customer sent you database from the field, and you see that okay, it's all database and it's probably not behave correctly, so you can just apply this, say okay, downgrade database to version before, see how it behaves, or upgrade to version before, so really useful thing. Okay. Any questions? So I think we have 10 minutes more, right? Yep. Okay, so maybe one or two libraries we can talk. And I'm trying to block about, oops. Here. So I'm trying to block about all these libraries. So I think half of them already I described in my blog. Just quick start. A little bit more than we're discussing today. But if you just want to remind, I will have a link in there. You can go and check. As I'm sooner or
Could we
later.
take a look maybe at that MPOI thing and the licensing? Did you want to talk about that at all?
I
Or?
think we covered it at the time.
Yeah, so
Cover
it's,
the top,
yeah,
yeah.
just conflicting with the library.
Yeah.
Library by itself, it's simple. It's a very interesting case. That you see it one library, see license okay, it works for me, but you need to understand that this library may depend on other libraries which maybe not compatible with you. And it's a fault of developers of this library. They're probably not allowed to have Apache license when they depend on GLP. Okay, so
To do
Next.
Jill?
hmm?
Jill or MQ?
Jill? Jill or NetMQ. Okay, so Jill is small, we can talk about this. And then I can quickly talk about NetMQ. Okay. So Jill is a library created by people from Stack Overflow. They needed a really fast JSON serializer. JSON.NET didn't work for them, so they went and created something specific for them to help their performance needs. And so, yeah, it's about performance. And again, this is data from Stack Overflow, how they measure, how their pages render it when they get JSON from database and serialize it and present. So Blue is Jill. This one, red, is JSON.NET. Protobuf, which usually considered as one of the most fastest approach to serialize the serialized data. And green is Service Stack serializer. So as you can see, for some cases, Jill may be even faster than Protobuf. So Protobuf is a binary serializer from Google originally, really fast. And all the time, Jill is faster than JSON.NET. It's just an example. How usage of Jill looks? Again, because they optimize for performance, they said serializing to string directly is slow. We are using string writer, it's faster, so small optimizations. If you want, you can still serialize to string, but they recommend if you really care about performance, serialize into string writer. And it's easy, so just JSON serialize, string, it outputs your data. Deserialize, the same, so string reader, JSON deserialize, and it works. Simple API, again, it's about simplicity and about getting the most effective way to serialize JSON. How it's implemented, why it's faster. They're using smart tricks with code generation. So for every time when they need to serialize or deserialize new type, which was not serialized before, they actually generating deserializer specific for this class. So in memory, they create new deserializer which works specifically for this class, optimized for this class. That's why they can do it fast. Downside of this, that first call for any new type is slower. So approach which they recommend, do something like warm up. When you start your server, or service, or application, go through the types which are critical for you. Just do database serialization. They will generate all the code needed, and all next calls will be really, really fast for you. Okay?
Where are we with, I know code access security is kind of a thing in the past. But don't you, in order to, I guess they're emitting IL, jittering on the fly.
Yes.
So don't you need to be in like some kind of full trust situation? And is that a good thing
No.
or a bad thing? Or
You don't need.
not?
No,
You don't
because
need any
it's,
special.
you are not generating code. It's still in memory,
Right.
so you can just generate it in your out domain. It's not going outside of your out domain, so it's okay.
I thought there was something about that, but maybe not. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Okay. And let's see, what will be the last one? Last one to discuss, most interesting. Any? Yes.
Poly.
Poly. Okay, that's nice library. So actually, Poly, do you know .NET Rocks podcast? Yeah, so Dave Campbell and Richard Carl
Campbell.
Franklin, Carl Franklin and Richard Campbell. So Carl Franklin is owner of a company called AppWiNext, and guy who worked on Poly sometimes ago said, okay, I'm done, I have no life, I need to step out. And AppWiNext took ownership, and me as part of AppWiNext, we participate in this Poly stuff, so we put much more effort. So now it grows faster. So we brought Poly to .NET community, to .NET what's it called? Foundation, yes. So, okay. .NET Foundation, and soon we will release version 5 of Poly with lots of great features. So what I will show now quickly, it's based on version 4. Version 4. Okay. So let's see this project. close this. Okay, my console application. Again, with Poly, as with many of these infrastructure libraries, we have two steps. Configure something, use something. With Poly, first we need to say we want to handle these, what kind of exceptions we want to handle. So for example, I have here a function which I expect may throw some exception. And I think it will throw exception something like divide by zero. Okay? So I'm creating a policy. I'm creating a policy which will handle this situation. So I'm saying that my policy handle divide by zero exception. And when I have this policy, I need to say what to do if this exception happened. So what I want to do. So I handle, I go, I can say that, let's say, I believe that if I will try a couple of more times, it will work. So I will say I want to wait and retry. I will retry 3 times, and I want to wait something like new times 10. Oops. This. Say times 10 from 4 seconds. Okay, so what I'm saying is that in this policy, if exception happened, I want to retry the same code 3 times, and every time for each iteration, I want to wait 3 seconds. So x here represent index of iteration. So it will be 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now when I have policy defined, and this policy is reusable. So basically, I define policy, and now I can use this policy to execute any functions I want. I'm saying policy dot execute, and I will execute my function. Okay. Okay. So something like this. Now, if I will run it. It's okay. 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 Maybe it's not very visible. I do something like this. So first we run first time, we run second time, we wait a little bit longer, wait, run third time, and then policy said, okay, I tried 3 times, it's still failing, I give up. Now I restore exception outside. For first, second, third time, it didn't throw. It's like, okay, edit and let function to execute again, 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 again. Yes.
So can you have multiple policies all executing on a given function?
Multiple policies. You can drop policies. You can drop one policy in another policy. Plus, what you can do, you can say here, in addition to this, or something like this. So you can have more than one exception if you want in one policy. And also you can drop policies, one policy in other policy in other policy. Okay. So, and before we stop here, I will just show you one interesting thing called circuit breaker. So this is a very simple pattern, and more advanced pattern called circuit breaker. So you know, when you have circuit, current is flowing, and sometimes it may break. Right? Same here. Instead of saying wait and retry, we can say circuit breaker. And here is, instead of doing this, let's say time span from hours to 5. And this. So by doing this, we are saying that we're okay if three exceptions happened. So here it's not number of retries, it's a number of exceptions our circuit can tolerate. So first time exception happened, that's fine. Second time, that's fine. But on third time, circuit is broken and nothing is going through the circuit anymore. So if I will try to send something through the circuit, it will just throw exception immediately, even without trying to execute this. When it's useful, when you have something like database, something wrong with a database, and you don't want clients to actively try to get data and make things even more complicated. So you're saying, okay, I tried a couple of times, now I will wait for 5 hours before I can even try to access database again. So in previous case, with a simple scenario, we always tried, failed. Here we tried a couple of times to see there is exception, okay, we are waiting. Usually the circuit breaker is wrapped inside of wait and retry policy. Basically you are doing this policy, you wrap in other policy. When circuit breaker is broken, it's immediately source exception, but this exception is catched by your outer retry policy, and it retries again with some wait time. So you can combine them. You have a good file over for your algorithms, for your resource access.
How do you combine policies?
Oh, just execute one policy and another policy.
Okay. So you just chain them?
Yeah, just change it. Okay. So this is thing, and version 5 is coming soon. Lots of more advanced patterns built in. So take a look if this is the scenario you make.
Does the circuit breaker reset at any point? Let's say I get one.
Yeah,
And
so-
5 hours goes by, does it reset to zero
Yes,
again?
yeah. So
Like
when-
not after 3, I mean, if 1 happened,
Mhm.
and then for the next 10 hours, I don't get any more. Does it reset back to 0, or does it?
You can set policy when to reset.
Oh, when to reset?
Yeah. By default, no reset.
By default, it
By
resets.
default, but you can set up when to reset.
Hmm.
And also it can be asynchronous, so you can use async pattern if it's part of your application. And yeah. So with this, let me last slide. So I mentioned that I'm blogging about these libraries, so I'm adding one by one. I think I have several of them already, and adding more. So you can go on my blog if you just what we not discussed. If you really want to see what this library are about, you can go and watch. And to this,